Now, Jonathan, whenever you're on, I have a feeling I'm about to learn something.
I'm all with the learning. Chock full of learning.
Today, what exciting thing am I going to learn?
All right, so usually when I'm in Gamestorming, I talk about games and game design and game mechanics. Today I want to talk about game production.
Really?
Specifically, so I run Protospiel South, which is a board game design convention here in Austin. People bring their prototypes and we play them. And there's a bunch of people that are involved in board gaming and they're like, I've got this game and I've been working on it for 3 years and I put my blood, sweat, and tears into it and now I want to get it published. And so what I'm going to talk about today is, so you've got a game, what can you do, real practical steps you can do to get your game published?
That's a really good question. I don't have the faintest clue how you even get started on that.
But I bet you know an awful lot about how to get a book published.
I do have a clue about that.
And actually, just a quick tangent. Have you ever gone through a traditional publisher for your books, or have all your books been...
I actually have chosen to do indie. I've gone through the process with traditional publishers and chose to do indie for a variety of reasons.
And that
mostly
makes
involving
perfect sense.
making more money.
And that's actually a big part of it, is that if you have a board game, the process is very similar in that you can go indie or you can go through a publisher, and if you go through a publisher, you're not going to make nearly as much. But if you go indie, there's an awful lot more work involved. So anyway, let's say you've said, all right, I don't want to do all the work that's involved in going indie.
And it's a lot.
I want to go ahead and I want to get this game sold to a publisher. First off, don't think that you're going to sell the game to a publisher. Think that you're going to license it to the publisher for a period of about 2 years for a royalty somewhere between 5 and 8%, which might sound small, but that's a topic for another time.
Yeah.
So, first thing I want to mention is blind playtesting. One of the most important things to do with your game is to blind playtest it. I've seen so many people say, hey, I've got this game and my family loves it, my friends love it, this is going to be a great game.
And they would never be biased and tell you
Never.
what you want to hear.
Never, never. Your friends are never biased. And especially somebody who's played your game like 5 or 10 or 15 times, they're absolutely not going to have any problem reading a rule book that's completely indecipherable.
Now, with gaming, how do you find the people for blind playtesting? For people that are like, I don't know, I've got 5 friends and I'm a lonely person.
So blind playtesting, there's a few things, right? One is that you can go to pretty much almost any local game store. So here in Austin, for example, you've got Dragon Slayer and Great Hall Games and Whose Turn Is It Games and all these other places, right? And board gamers are generally very welcoming. And if you just say, hey, I've got this, you know, you don't want to just go to a group of strangers and say, hey, play my game. But if you hang out with people, you know, you're like, oh, and by the way, I'm working on this game. Will you play it? And they'll be like, sure.
I would think joining a board games meetup, if you're not already a member of one,
Absolutely, board game
would be a great
meetups.
thing to do too. Every city has one. I mean, seriously, they're ridiculously popular.
And the other thing I should mention is the Board Game Designers Forum. Google that, BGDF, Board Game Designers Forum. There's people that, you know, once you've put in your time, you know, they know that you're a decent person, you send them your game.
So
and they'll play it.
Let's say you've got it blind play tested. What is the next step?
All right, so blind play test. So there's a bunch of other next steps, but usually after blind play test, your next step is going to be revising your game, taking good constructive feedback. But that's another topic, actually. I'm trying to hit my kind of top things that I wish people told me. Blind play test. Second thing is reasonable components. I've seen so many people who've got these gorgeous games with all these wonderful components, and I look at it and I go, that's amazing, and your retail price is going to be $85 a box, which nowadays actually is
like Days of Wonder can get away with that because, because Days of Wonder games are beautiful, but they chose to make that. I'm assuming that anybody submitting something to Days of Wonder or any place else that would do something that beautiful would submit very simplified parts, right?
So you got two thoughts here, right? First one is that I'm a publisher and you come to me with your game and you say, hey, it's going to require 200 handcrafted components out of ivory and ebony, and you say, and I'm not going to make your game. I don't care how good your game is, I'm not going to make it, right? The second thing, though, is you mentioned Days of Wonder. Days of Wonder, consider Small World, one of their flagship games. That game looks amazing. And what it is it's a board and it's die-cut pieces. And those die-cut pieces, they've got great art, they have really nice shapes, they lock together real well, they support the game. And die-cut pieces are actually far less expensive than you might think.
Especially if you have a local tech shop or any other type of hackerspace you could go to.
Which jumps ahead a little bit in the future of this thing, which is that if you've got access to a laser cutter, like a tech shop or a hackerspace, you can make some great prototype components for your games for very, very cheaply, and they look fantastic.
Now, let's say you're looking for a different alternative for really cheap parts. The people at Meeple People have a brand new Kickstarter that's coming out very soon, and they're going to have even more types of meeples you can get. So you can get, like, I'm pretty sure they're going to have a camel. If not, I'm going to be deeply, deeply disappointed. But in addition to camels, they're going to have a lot of different custom shapes that you can get. So you can evoke things on a budget.
Yeah. No, it's just you put a bunch of little bits in front of them. It's like, oh, there's a game here.
You know, bits make a difference. As much as I love the cheap-ass games, those were really fun, but I would go and grab my best bits to play with them, even though it was just something that was printed out on a laser printer.
Bookmark bits for a moment. We're going to go to the next topic. All right, so next thing is analyze the lineup of the company that you're pitching to. Don't just say, I'm going to take this game about dinosaurs, I'm going to pitch it to every single company I can think of. You're going to pitch that to Steve Jackson Games because Steve Jackson loves dinosaurs, right? You choose your audience, and then you pitch to them. If you go to Days of Wonder, you're going to pitch something maybe with a fantasy theme that's going to play about anywhere from 2 to 5 people, and it's going to take about 2 hours to play, right? Yeah. You're not going to pitch them your 2-player card-based customizable card game that plays in 25 minutes.
It's in your own best interest to be strategic. And any of you that say, but that's a lot of research and that takes time that I could be doing other things, tough, do it.
If your attitude is that, you don't deserve to be published. Because the other thing is that the thing that's the best predictor of whether a game's going to get published, it's not the quality of your game. It's not even the quality of your art, although that's fantastic stuff. It's persistence. The only thing that I'm going to bet on is persistence. Do you get stuff done? Then you're probably going to get published.
Fascinating. I would not have thought that.
That's how my stuff got published.
So what is our next point?
All right, next one. Analyze their lineup, get to know them. If you can, if at all possible, go to the trade shows. Gamma Trade Show in Las Vegas happens once a year. Really, really great place to go and be seen. Even if you're not, you don't want your first contact with them to be, take my game, please, because
now, when you say trade shows, you're not talking about going to Gen Con or Origins or something like that,
I'm not actually. So that's another thing, right? Is if you go to a show like Gen Con or Origins or something like that, don't just walk up to them and go, I've got a game, look at it, right? Bare minimum, contact them 3 months, 2 months in advance and say, hey, I've got this prototype. Here's my 2-sentence pitch. Are you interested in seeing it at this upcoming convention?
And they'll probably still say no, I'm going to guess. I've been to Gen Con several times, and it's a madhouse. That is the worst time to try and talk to someone about business.
They're there because they're trying to sell the stuff they've already got. They're really not looking for new things. But at a trade show, like the Gamma Trade Show, GTS, Google it, that's a fantastic place to pitch your stuff. Now, they're trying to sell to wholesalers and retailers, right? But they've got a lot more time, and they're a lot more willing to socialize, too. Get involved in the poker night, go out to a club with them. That's the time where you're going to really, really succeed.
What about getting on things like Board Game Geek, or what other forums would be really useful as far as contacting people and getting to know them
They've got like super secret ninja forums that you only find about if you go to things like the Gamma Trade Show or you take people out to barbecue.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was a more public venue that they could try.
Nah, again, your best substitute for that is the Board Game Designers Forum, and to an extent, going on Board Game Geek and contacting them through their own channels there. But your level of contact with them is going to be a little bit reduced there than through, there's nothing like meeting them face-to-face and having a drink and eating barbecue.
So what's next?
All right, what's next is make a sell sheet. All right, so if you're a publisher, what you've got is you've got these sheets that you send to retailers and wholesalers saying, here's our new games. They are awesome. Buy them. And they're 1 page, 8.5 by 11. Typically have a picture of the game, a little bit of bullet points about the stuff, and then just information about what makes the game awesome. If publishers are doing that to sell their games to retailers and wholesalers, you as a designer should make a sheet that goes to them and says, this is what you're looking for.
And I gotta say, as someone who also works in publishing, if you cannot summarize it in the form of an Amazon listing, and that's just a good overall use, then you need to go back to the revision stage of your game. If you can't describe it at that level, something's wrong.
If you don't know what a sell sheet is, if you just Google sell sheet Chrononauts or sell sheet Looney Labs, you'll find a few Looney Labs sell sheets, and they show you exactly what you're looking for. And you could do way worse than imitating Looney Labs. They've been in the business for literally decades.
So what else have we got?
All right. Include all the components. And I know
you are not cheap-ass games.
I know this sounds like a no-brainer, but I worked at Steve Jackson Games. I was one of the game developers, and I had boxes of games. They said, they said, all right, and now grab some D6s or grab some pawns. And I know it sounds trivial, but it makes you look bad.
And you don't want to make them stop paying attention to your game and go do something else. You want 100% of their attention right there on your game in that instant.
Clarity is king. If your game is hard to play, even if it's a low threshold, like grab some D6s, your game is probably not going to get taken. Include all the components, please. Please do yourself that favor. And that brings us to clearly label your box, all right? I worked at Steve Jackson Games. You would not believe how many prototypes just came shoved in an envelope, and we took old boxes from other games that were Steve Jackson Games, put the components in those, and then stuck a label on it and just kind of, game, right? And
Now,
it's on
this
the
is
shelf.
something I find a little bit fascinating because the packaging is really important from what you were telling me earlier. You need to have just a plain white, like discreet plain white wrapper type of box, right?
So you don't want something that's going to have a lot of graphics. That you have a few pieces of information you must make clear on the outside of your box. I'm talking every side of it, the edge sides, the top, and the back, because you don't know how they're going to be putting this on their shelf in the middle of this office with so many other competing things. You want the name of the game to be clear and bold and readable from at least 25 feet away. You want your name to be clear, bold, and readable from at least 10 feet away. You want your email address, your phone number, your shipping address, the date you sent it to them, and if you have this in your agreement with them, and you should have an agreement with them for the viewing of your prototype, when it expires, what time they should just be like, all right, I'm going to send it back to this person now or throw it in the trash.
So 2 things that I want to address there because we have a limited amount of time here. First off, the whole idea of something from 25 feet away. This is super, super important. If you go into Barnes & Noble and you see the Janet Ivanovich books that have a 4-inch tall set of letters, you're like, man, I don't know why she does that. Because you can see it from 25 feet away and you suddenly know there's a new book. The best example of this I can think of is Terry Pratchett. In the UK, his books are sold with these beautiful Paul Kirby covers. They're lush, they're gorgeous. You have no idea what the title of that book is, even from 2 feet away. But you're pretty sure it's Terry Pratchett because it's Paul Kirby art. In the US, they completely ditch that art. You've got a solid color, kind of metallic looking letters, 4 or 5 inches tall, title, and then even his name is a little bit shorter. As long as I've got Discworld and that on there, you know what it is from across the room. You are competing with every other person that has ever submitted a game and all their own in-house games and, worst importantly, their boredom. Make sure you've got their attention from 25 feet away.
And not just their boredom, but also just how overwhelmed they are, right? Do yourself this favor. This is the most important thing that I've mentioned in this entire thing, by the way. Last but not least, set expectations. They're the publisher. They've got a lot of power, right? They've got the money. They've got the connections. You're just little game designer. Hey, please take my stuff, right? But you're still important. And you still have a right to set expectations with them. So earlier, you were...
One of the most interesting expectations that I thought of, that I thought when I...
Go for it.
Nouns! Is telling them when you're done. Because much like in book publishing that I'm familiar with, you can submit something and it might be a year or longer before you hear back if things are going well. If you get it back immediately, they hated it. But the longer it goes, the better your odds. But that doesn't mean they're going to take it. If you set something from the beginning saying, you know what, 4 months from now I'm submitting this to other games, buy it or don't. You can do that. Yeah, it takes a little bit of balls, but you can do that.
And you should do that. Now, my experience with game companies, and it varies from company to company very wildly depending on how big they are, but if you say, hey, you can look at this for 6 months, you're being a little bit generous. 4 months is aggressive, but reasonable as long as they don't have any big conventions coming up, Origins, Gen Con, right?
Never overlap it with any of the trade shows.
Don't send your prototype to some company just before one of those big conventions.
You mean really they shouldn't do it before Spiel?
Oh, that would be an awesome idea. Go ahead and send it to them before that, and you'll never see your game again. Very brief tangent off that. Components, right? It was going to be components, meeples. Don't worry about it anyway. Set expectations. Set expectations for whether you're going to be sending it to other publishers. There are a lot of people that won't look at it if you're going to send it to other people. And set expectations for, all right, you've got exclusive rights to look at this for the next 4 or 6 months. And then after that, if you're going to have them send it back to you, include the postage back. If you do not include postage back, they won't send it to you.
Although I think it's
tape it on the
polite to just let
inside.
them have it.
Now, you see, that's the other thing is you can. And that depends on how much money you invest in your prototype, which touched on something you asked before, which is don't put a bunch of art into it, right? You can put like placeholder art, but don't invest a lot of time. Make it look clean, make it look nice. If you can make it look engaging, do that. But clarity is more important than snazzy.
And they've got in-house artists, and they're going to want to do their own branding on it, so don't worry about that. Now, this is a great topic. We have to go pretty soon, like now, but I would love to delve into something like this more later. So we might try and come back at you with a little bit more details about some of the aspects of this. If you have any questions, definitely add them in the comments. We'll get Jonathan back to address this again and answer some of your questions about it, because I'm sure that this broad overview is a lot of you scrambling and taking notes and going, okay, but what about? Let him know what about, and he'll answer.
Make your box clear.